Alright, so welcome to this week's lecture. We didn't really have time to go over some of this stuff in class, and so I wanted to make sure that you guys got the content for this week. Um, just a recap on what you guys are doing in class. I really love what you guys are working on and what you guys are doing with regard to your molds, your two-part molds, your one-part molds. Hopefully, you're gaining a lot of insight into this method and process of fabrication. That in mind, I thought it would be a good lead in to talk about 3D printing and where it's going, its advantages, and the effects on 3D printing for designers today. So bear with me as I go through this. A lot of these links I'm not going to click on, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a link to this Prezi presentation so that if you're interested, you can take a look at some of these links that I've got highlighted in this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. 3D printing. So where are we today when it comes to 3D printing? Well, the reality, uh, why is it doing that? R. Okay. The reality of 3D printing is that if you think about it in terms of where desktop printing was in the late 80s and early 90s, that's where desktop publishing was from a cost standpoint relative to where 3D printing is today. So the average 3D printer um, is not something that every household has due to the cost. And right now they're ranging anywhere from the low end of $500 all the way up to $50,000. But you can get decent 3D printers that range anywhere from 500 to, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 or $1,000. It depends. So basically, that's where we're at today. We are essentially um, living in the late 80s, early 90s as far as price range as to how much 3D printers cost. And so we're looking today and we're seeing where we are today as far as every household pretty much having a desktop printer that probably costs under $100. And so what this is telling me is that we potentially can see the price go down in the next 5 to 10 years to the point where it becomes affordable to everybody have a 3D printer at home for whatever need you might have. So um, that kind of gives you a snapshot. Now, obviously, in the late 80s and early 90s, people went to Kinko's or they went to other places to print things out because it was too costly for consumers to print their own projects. So still you see a lot of people finding different places like there's MakerBot in Seattle where you can go and you can sign up for a membership and you can use their 3D printer for a marginal cost or a minimal cost. And there's different things like that popping up where you'll start seeing different places where you can 3D print objects before it becomes something that becomes ubiquitous within the home. Um, right now, we're also doing multi-stage, multi-process printing. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're printing things like the electronic ear that Princeton just printed out, which is it was an ear that also has all the electronics and all the actual working mechanisms within that 3D printed ear. And so you're looking at multiple materials all in one print. You're looking at electronics being incorporated in that print. The Economist also came out with an article recently that they're almost close enough right now to start printing out cell phones. That includes all the electronics involved, all the materials, all the casings, everything like that. They're looking at different inks that actually can conduct electricity, that can act as capacitors and resistors. And so from that standpoint, we're looking at multi-stage, multi-process processes that typically were broken up along the assembly line, but now could potentially be all printed all at once. Um, and then once again, how is it changing industry? Well, there are many reasons and different things that are being impacted by 3D printing. For example, right now there's a company in the Netherlands that is actually looking into 3D printing houses, and especially houses that are there in Amsterdam on the canals, and they're also looking at um, 3D printing cars. There's a company, I believe, a Canadian company that is currently working on a 3D printed car. Now, not all the parts of the car are 3D printed, but certainly a lot of the components are 3D printed. And so it's changing industry because of the impacts that it's having on how things get made and produced. Obviously, um, everyone has probably heard about the 3D printed gun that came out, that everything on the gun itself, except for the firing pin, was 3D printed, and how those plans recently got pulled from the government, and the individual Cody, I think Cody Wilson, I think his name, who's a law student. Um, he's the one that actually developed that 3D printed gun that was fully functional. I think only shot one bullet, but still, it potentially has a pretty significant impact on industry from that standpoint. So if we look at different advantages, the advantage of 3D printing is that it doesn't require you to be as conscious when you're designing. Okay, now I say that lightly because I don't want you guys to just think, oh, now that we're 3D printing anything, you don't have to think about how you make things. Well, no, that's not the case, because actually 3D printing is still very expensive, and so you have to be careful as far as material and all the other stuff that you have to incorporate when it comes to a design. But um, undercuts, what undercuts, right? Because you really don't have to worry about undercuts, because everything is being laid up layer by layer. Some other advantages to 3D printing is that you can create live hinges. You like that? Live hinges. And you can create independent ball bearings that actually can be printed, so that when you are finished, you've got a fully functional um, ball bearing system. You also can create solid interlocking parts. So, like, imagine taking two wedding bands or two rings and printing those together so that there's a gap in between it, and so that after you dissolve the support material, you essentially have two interlocking solid parts that would be very difficult to manufacture otherwise. Um, and then draft angles, who cares about draft angles, right? Um, Once again, kind of like undercuts, draft angles aren't as much of an issue because you're not pulling the object out of a mold. And so, in that sense, draft angles don't matter nearly as much. Um, Let me see here. How am I doing on time? I got to be careful. Okay, so we're good to go. I just got to be careful because YouTube only lets me upload 15 minutes worth of material. So I'm gonna show you guys this video real quick. This is a really interesting video. I'm not sure if you'll have audio, but let's go for it.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next episode in our series on additive technologies.
I'm actually going to,
today we'll be taking a look at additive manufacturing in
I don't think
metal.
you guys are hearing
the parts
it,
that you
so
see today